Hey there, guys. It's Alex here, and with me today is a very special guest. It's none other than my younger brother, Chris. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
And yeah, so today we're just gonna have a little discussion of what went wrong with the Star Wars sequel trilogy, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion on it, and we are no different. Um, we got them opinions, so why not put them out there and add them to the mix?
Yep.
Yeah, so now that the films are all done and everybody's had a chance to step back a little bit with this retrospective view, and I can say for certain that things did not go correctly, and
hmm
we're going to share what some of those things might be. So a lot of these discoveries stem from us, or at least me, watching all three of the sequel trilogy films back to back.
Yeah.
And some of these may potentially explain the things that we believe people did not like about Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, and why we think those were J.J. Abrams' fault. I'm just gonna cut to the chase and say it right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Hmm.
Um. Yeah. I agree with that because it's everything that JJ set up. Like what he wanted. He just set a footnote of where the entire trilogy should go,
Hmm.
and not everyone's gonna go with that, especially Ryan. So Ryan, like, he made his own decision, sure, but it's like the things that people hate in The Last Jedi. I They say it's all Ryan's fault, and I can't agree with that because
Yeah.
it's especially Luke is the prime example of that because
Oh,
J.
we'll get to Luke.
Yes, JJ, oh boy. All
Yeah.
right.
So just to add another perspective, we were both on board with The Force Awakens when it came out,
Mm-hmm.
and we both loved The Last Jedi, and then we felt that everything completely fell apart in that last stretch with The Rise of Skywalker. And like I said, we believe a lot of this can be tracked back to just this litany of issues that were present, like right from the beginning, and how they just unraveled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so some of those things were, they were hard to see without this full picture. So, now that this allows us to look back at the origin of all those things and be like, wow, if this hadn't happened this way, they might have been able to clean this up a little bit. And I think it just comes down to the overall trilogy being JJ's responsibility. Like, he was exec producer on the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
He directed the first film and the third film, and he was exec producer for the entire trilogy. So it's essentially his baby, but he did not seem to run it or have any idea about how to approach it in a way that perhaps like a Marvel movie would have, or like Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Like that guy has like a map. Like I just imagine him having a map that connects every piece with one another. So there's no road that doesn't lead to somewhere or go back to somewhere else. Like everything is accounted for. Everything has an answer. Like things happen because this thing happened. Whereas I think JJ, his style of filmmaking seems to be just like come up with a million cool ideas that you know are interesting on their own, and just throw them all on the wall and see what sticks, and then if nothing sticks, just let it go. Yeah. So this is interesting because like we don't know exactly what his plan was. He claims like for example that there were story elements that were there from the beginning. Like I know that he's talked about that Palpatine was always going to come back, and I don't know if I believe him. Like I don't
Mm,
want to doubt, but I would be so much more willing to give Abrams a pass if like he wasn't also taking a dump on Johnson, and if he wasn't talking ill of The Last Jedi. Like it just
yeah.
hits me in the wrong way. Like like I said, this was his thing. He was responsible for getting this thing cooking, and even if he didn't have a map of the three films, and that is an approach that you can have a bunch of ideas and decide how they're going to play out. Like we all know that in the original trilogy, there were decisions being made about certain characters and who they were, and Leia and Luke were brother sister. But the question is, like, did he set himself up for disaster with the number of mysteries that he opened up with in The Force Awakens? Because he kind of worked himself into a corner by painting certain characters and certain story elements in a certain way, and that's the thrust of my issues. Like
Yeah.
our imaginations were all just going crazy after The Force Awakens. Like
Yeah.
even though it was a sort of like weird duplicate of A New Hope, like
Yeah.
I think all those mystery box elements got people really stoked. And then once they started having to find their logical conclusion, it was like, wow, these were not good ideas.
Yeah, it's going back to what you said about like Force Awakens being a duplicate of A New Hope. Um, I yeah, I could see those comparisons, and I know like people can use those like comparisons to just contrast the movie and throw it in a dumpster, whatever.
Mm,
I I'm not bothered by it that much. There's a lot of points where it does bother me. I think Star
yeah.
Killer base is definitely numero uno, but it's but I'm not entirely bothered from a production standpoint. It kind of makes sense. You haven't seen a Star Wars movie in 10 years, and you
Sure.
haven't seen a overwhelmingly like critically positive one in almost 40. So it's like um you're kind of at that pressure point. I'm not bothered that they decided to do something like that. I would have preferred something new, but it doesn't bother me as much as it does other people, but
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah. And it just seemed like, watching Force Awakens, like literally everything was a mystery that needed to be solved instead of just plots being set up and resolved.
Yeah.
And parentage was a mystery, locations of people were a mystery, like origins of artifacts were a mystery, like identities of important characters were a mystery. Like everything had to be a stupid mystery, like that you needed to stay tuned for to find out the truth. And it was like, like hindsight is 2020, right? And Lost is pretty much unanimously known as a letdown in terms of series conclusions, and a lot of people crap on the writing team, but Abrams is mirroring the same stupid pitfalls that dragged Lost down into the mud. Like he's setting up mysteries that they just ditched because they had no answers. Like they just thought that the mystery itself was cool, and without any idea of what that might mean in the future. And I think what happened on Lost was they were setting up writing challenges for people that were like unable or unwilling to meet them.
Mhm.
And so that's where Ryan Johnson came in. So if you have an idea of the end game, like if you claim that Palpatine was always going to come back,
Then
why not share that with your collaborator? Because he is your collaborator on this film series. Like you are in charge of producing this film series, and your collaborators need to know what they can and can't do in order to meet your vision. And if you're going to let this person construct their own narrative based on what you left them, like the breadcrumbs that you left, and you're not going to have any oversight over that version, until after the fact, and then you're going to crap on it with everybody else to make yourself look better, like, I'm sorry, you're the worst. I think one of the greatest disappointments, like before we start going back and really, really breaking down each film, like
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest disappointments to me is that the characters just did not really go anywhere. Like, I feel like Kylo Ren, like, who started off as one of the most intriguing characters and villains in the Star Wars universe, like, he was left hanging high and dry with zero dialogue after he basically came over to the light side of the Force. And also, like, I didn't feel like there was any explanation for why he turned to the light side of the Force. Like, Rey saved him, but where
It's
was her asking him, like, point blankly, forget just I wanted to take your hand, like of Ben. Like
mhm.
I would have liked her to ask some tough questions, like, so why did you do it? Now that you're coming over here, like, can you tell me why you did it? Like, why did you kill your father? And I would have liked for Kylo Ren to really struggle with that answer, like to have to earn his redemption. Like
Mhm.
having the same conversation with his father, like almost note for note, except like he didn't kill him this time. Like it's not enough. So the question is like, what was the plan? Like, was the plan to always have Kylo redeem himself, and then was the plan to also have Kylo say nothing after he's redeemed? Like not one word.
He said ow.
That's right, he
That's
did.
it.
Yeah, he did. He did say one word. He said "ow." That's literally all he says is "ow," like in a weird, sarcastic, like, "Oh, that's gotta hurt," like that kind of action movie like shrug off. You know, it's funny that the whole time he's like, I'll kill Snoke. I'm gonna turn on you. I'm gonna kill you, Palpatine. And then he just ends up doing that. Like we actually don't know who Kylo Ren is. He gave us nothing. Like there is no end to his story. Like just becoming a Jedi disappearing is not an ending for Kylo Ren. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he was going to turn on Palpatine from the very start, and none of this is a good conclusion for his character.
No, not at all.
Yeah, see, a good conclusion for his character would be, at least in terms of how he was set up. Like, he was set up as like chaotic evil. So, like the original Empire, like Emperor, Vader, they were lawful evil. Like that's what they were.
Mhm.
So then Kylo Ren comes in, and he wants to tear the system down. You know, by the end of Last Jedi, he's torn it down, or he's at least made the first steps in tearing it down. But in Rise of Skywalker, he's just replaced the leadership, and he's just doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
nothing was really shaken up. Nothing was really interesting. Like he's still a typical villain until the minute he isn't, and
Mhm.
for no reason. Like even Vader's turn, like you can almost, by the same token, if you wanted to argue it, like if you wanted to play devil's advocate, you could say his turn wasn't really that believable either. It wasn't that earned. It just happened. Yeah, but that's his son. Like you
Yeah.
can believe a scenario in which you're watching your son being slowly murdered by someone you thought was your ally. Like
Mhm.
that would flip a switch for like any parent. Like I'm not even a parent, and I can understand that connection. And before that happened, Vader was like, I want you on my side. Like I don't want to hurt you. Like I'm not a good guy. Like you're not gonna turn me, but I want to turn you. Like I actually believe in our relationship.
Yeah.
And it could be argued that it's because he cared about Luke. So that's an absolutely believable pivot. Like in the moment to watch your son being slowly killed. Like your emotions can take over and be like, I'm good now, rah! Like, what was it with like, for Rey and Kylo though? Like, she just closed up his wound. Like, she stabbed him first, so he's humbled, I guess. Like, wow, she healed me, so I guess I'm good now.
Yeah. I mean, it was that, but it was like also Leia, I guess you could say, where Leia just
Mm-hmm.
decided to leave the plot and
Yeah,
go into Kylo.
I
But
guess.
it's
Yes.
it just it didn't feel natural to me. It just like
No.
it's something that just kind of like happened, and
Mm-hmm.
you just have to accept. Okay, Ben's good now, so there you go.
Yeah. So that's a good indication of where we're going with all this. So like let's go back to The Force Awakens where I think this all started. So JJ is so obsessed with playing the same beats as Star Wars, like he needed a droid that was holding something important. He
Yep.
needed that to be the case because when you watch the original Star Wars, like the first like 20 minutes or so is just R2 and 3PO wandering around. Like he got a list together of all the things to do to replicate, like to replicate A New Hope. Like I have a new Empire, I have a new Luke, which is Rey, a new Vader, which is Kylo. Like clearly he did that. Um, but the most mysterious thing to me is why would you do that in the final stretch of a 9-film series when you're putting together the final 3 films to the ultimate conclusion? Like why would you start with a film that number 7 is aping A New Hope? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, so enter BB-8. So he's the new droid he's the carrier of some game-changing artifact or MacGuffin. So he's like, I've got my R2D2. R2 had the message for Obi-Wan from Leia to get him back. So Luke is the new Obi-Wan. The new droid's got the new map or message or whatever. This thing that is linking an old master to be back in play. But I think he reverse engineered the story. It's like, I got my droid now. I need my droid to be carrying something important. What
Mhm.
is that? And I think this is where he screwed up. So he's got this map. That was his answer. A map to the hidden Luke Skywalker. So this is right away the biggest set of problems that Rian Johnson, like, I feel like, dealt with very elegantly and the best that he could.
Yeah.
But let's break this down, right? So J.J. Abrams could have started this in any way that he wanted to. Like he didn't need the First Order fully formed, which they are. The First Order is in prime condition. They're completely operational. Like they've got a supreme leader. Like there doesn't seem to be any kinks in there. They're in full control. They've got a planet-sized base. Like it just is a planet. Like
Yeah.
they're just killing it, and there's no explanation as to how they got there. Like we're not talking that many years, right?
It's only like 30, and
Yeah, 30 if we're being generous.
but it's if you want to say it came from the ashes of the empire, okay, But this is at a point where the rebellion like finally overconquered the Empire.
Yeah.
So how did they rise back up? And we never find out. That's just one of the many mysteries that we still have in the
Mhm.
sequel trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, so what he's done is immediately he has locked up every main character as a failure because everybody let this happen. Like Leia, like Han Solo just went off and did his own thing, and then he's got Luke, right, who has disappeared and nobody knows where he is, and he's got Han Solo saying to Rey and Finn like Luke messed up. He felt really bad about it, and he ran away to hide. He felt like he was a failure, and he ran away. So, make no mistake about this. The Force Awakens established that Luke ran away because he felt that he was a failure and nobody knew where he was. And in that time, the First Order came to power with such force and vigor that they were able to develop a machine that can destroy entire planets of people. They can destroy the New Republic, like the existing governmental body. And Luke allowed that to happen. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, Luke had a plan with the map." And we'll get into the logistics of like theories of where that might have worked, but also nobody knew there was a planet-sized solar system killing base. Like, who is this rebellion? Everybody is a loser in this new film, and that's what he leaves Johnson with. He's like, "You need to pick up the pieces for my screwed up tale here of all these people being complete losers, right? And you have to make that work." And how he makes that work, we'll get into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest complaints about The Last Jedi is that Luke isn't an all-powerful mystic warrior. Like his path of growth wasn't an upward trajectory from what we last saw him as in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Like over that course of time, he should be a floating like master. But no, Abrams said he tried to do that. He failed. He tucked his tail between his legs and he ran away and hid under a rock. Like, that's what Abrams said. Abrams did that. Han Solo even says that. And there's nothing to contradict that. There's nothing else provided to us to say Han Solo was wrong about that. I guess, like, before we get into Luke and the Last Jedi, one of the logical extensions you can do with that character, like, knowing that information, is you can do what Johnson did, which is have Luke feel like he was a failure. You can say that Johnson just followed through on Abrams' own story, and he had Luke feeling like he was a failure, not wanting to return to the fight, and basically having this existential crisis. Like, That's one way to do it. But here's the second thing you could do. You can say that Luke didn't actually do what Han Solo said, and the first thing you need to do is take a leap to believe that Luke did something different. Is like, you have to take a leap from the filmmaker himself is telling you what happened. And that leap is basically that Luke had a plan to defeat the First Order by allowing everything, and he left this trail of puzzle pieces so that the Chosen One can find him. And then they can unlock the secret to killing like another like mystery box element to killing the final First Order, like final boss or whatever that might have been.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of fans think that that's what they thought the plot was supposed to be, like before Johnson got a hold of it, right? Like that seems to be what fans coming out of The Last Jedi thought should have happened, right?
Yeah.
They thought Luke was going to be like, "Oh, you found me. Like you completed my whatever test I put out there for you to solve, and now you and I will take on this whole army together with our unlimited power," which is just garbage because like the map. Okay, let's talk about the map.
Yeah.
Because I want to get into the map. Now, I'm all ready to caveat this by saying that there's probably some extended universe explanation as to where the map came from. But I don't care. I don't care about that stuff. Like, I do not consider it reasonable explanation for things that were not happening on screen. Because the Star Wars movies are gospel. Nothing in the extended universe ever affects anything in the movies. It's always a one-way pipeline. The movies inform everything. You should not need some type of outside source to tell you why there was a map to Skywalker. Like nobody questions where this map came from in the movie.
Yeah. That's like just one thing that like just looking back on confuses me so much. if Luke went on to the if Luke just went to this island to die, like he says in Last Jedi, and if
Yeah.
that's established in Force Awakens that Luke is hiding because you said it, he's a failure. Why on earth would you create a map that goes right to you?
Yeah. So let's play devil's advocate. Like, I hate that term, but let's do it. That map was created by Luke as a test. Like, he omitted a key piece, which was his exact location. So what is the test? To find the map and find a piece that was missing from it? Like, there's no steps involved in that to test anything that makes someone a qualified candidate to be trained as a Jedi. Like, Kylo Ren could have found it, and then what? So who made that map if Luke didn't? Because who knew that Luke was there? Like, as far as the other characters are concerned, like, nobody close to Luke's life knew where he went, and he didn't sound like he meant for anybody to find him. You know, that map exists in a void. Like, who made it? And why is there that piece missing? And, you know, I think it's because J.J. Abrams is maybe he was a big video gamer, like, when he was a kid. Like, there was always, like, a quest item that needed to be obtained. I don't know.
He's got some of that in Episode 9 with, like, the dagger and
Yes.
the Wayfinder and all that.
Exactly. It just raises another huge question. Like, why did whoever made the map believe that it would have any impact on what Luke would do once they got to him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when his decision was to walk away and be by himself after feeling like a failure.
Yeah.
Like, again, according to Han Solo in The Force Awakens, Luke's desire was to walk away from it and hang his cloak up and not be involved.
Yeah.
So here's what you do. Here's the most amazing logical thing you can do if you have somebody get to Luke, is you do exactly what Rian Johnson did. Like, you have to convince a salty old bastard who didn't want to be found that life is worth living and it's worth fighting for, and then you have to rediscover what makes you great.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what happened in the movie is that R2 had the rest of the map, right? Or did he have the piece? I'm trying to remember which one it was.
It was, so, like, BB-8 just had, like, where Luke was, but he didn't have the rest of the map. So R2 conveniently had, like, the rest of the map, like, in its entirety, besides the one missing piece. And it was, like, from the stupid and I don't believe argument that it's like when he plugged in the Death Star in New Hope that he got the rest of the map.
I mean, it makes sense that R2 would have a map because, you know, R2 was with Luke and he was his droid.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, okay, I could talk about what this map is all about and how Johnson did the only best thing that he could all day, but
yeah,
I want to talk about some of the other mysteries that JJ set up. So, you know, just to list a few so we can keep track of everything. You know, I've got Rey and Maz Kanata or whatever, and I've got Finn as well.
Okay.
Hey, let's take those two. I think those are good ones. Rey and Maz.
Okay.
Yeah. So who's Maz? Maz has her ear to the underground, right? Like, she has access to information and artifacts that would be out of reach for any other, like, normal person.
Yeah.
And she has Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker by way of Anakin's lightsaber, which was with Luke when his hand was chopped off. So essentially what they're saying is somehow Maz found the lightsaber that Luke lost when he got his hand chopped off by Vader, which was apparently an interesting story because Maz is like, oh, that's a story for another day. So here's the thing. So this is a Lost moment. I used to say this a lot. Like, I jumped in on Lost, like, very late, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm seeing a lot of writer shortcuts happening here, like some lazy writer techniques. Like, there's a thing that Lost did that they did this all the time, and I created a drinking game around it. I was like, do a shot anytime a character says, you're not ready to know that yet. Because they don't know, because the writers don't know. Like, Maz did the same thing. Like, that's a story for another time. Like, you're not ready for that information. Like, if anything, like, all this, like, gives me closure on Lost. Like, it was JJ's fault.
Yeah.
So she's got the lightsaber. We're introduced to an interesting new ability, which is like, it's like the Crow, like how he can touch the Crow, like how he can touch someone and feel all the pain they've experienced or evil they did. Like, it's how he would track killers by touching his wife's grave.
Mhm.
So Rey does that with Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Like it instantly teleports her to a setting that's very reminiscent of the Death Star, or I'm sorry, Cloud City,
Yeah.
where Luke and Darth Vader fought, like AKA where the lightsaber itself was lost.
Yes.
So right away, we're led to believe that Rey is connected to the memory of the lightsaber itself. Like it's thrusting her into its own past. Like she hears Vader's breathing. She's assaulted by like audio cues that are clearly Vader and evil, and that. But then she sees things that the lightsaber itself did not see, which is like Luke failing to defend his Jedi temple against Kylo Ren and the mysterious Knights of Ren. And then we see her being left on Jakku. So this lightsaber, by touching it, initially gives her the ability to see the lightsaber's memory. But that instantly falls apart in about 50 ways. Like, not only is this like a 20 mystery box moment packed into like 15 seconds, like, he introduces like I don't know how many new mysteries. Like, how do you get to the memory of being left on the planet? Because you can't get there from Luke. Like, you just can't.
No.
Like, you can't get there from Luke and the Knights of Ren, and you can't really get to Luke and the Knights of Ren like from Cloud City. Like, it's funny that she has that memory of being left by her parents as if it's a new thing for her, because like she's been marking down the days on that wall. Like, she knows exactly how long she's been there.
Yeah.
So Ryan Johnson looked at that part, and I don't think we should just go in order of the films. Like, I think we should just like jump around and try to connect things as we talk about them. Like, yeah. I guess before we do anything, like I just want to mention a couple of dumb things in The Force Awakens. Like, I have to mention before I forget. Like, I just want to point out how absurd that, number one, Finn is like, and this reinforces how The Force Awakens is filled with characters like acting illogically with character decisions. So Finn is like, I know that the First Order is looking for this droid, and he actually says something to Han Solo like, are there people in there that are going to see this droid? Like, doesn't he say something like is this a good place to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they all go in there, and they're not in there for 10 seconds before they're spotted by like 10 people who call the First Order and the Resistance. And then Finn is sitting there at a table with Maz and Han Solo, and he's saying that the First Order is probably on their way here. Like, this is not a good situation. Like, we should be running right now. Like, they don't run. They hang out for a while.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like Finn has moved on. Like, he's talking to some other people about getting a job or passage off the thing. Like, when he says the First Order is on their way, like, does he have a sense of how long it might take for them to get there? Because he's not rushing.
No.
And they do get there. Like, Kylo Ren's like master ship gets there in no time. But what makes it even weirder is that Kylo Ren's ship shows up, like, presumably still looking for BB-8 because he's going after Luke, right?
Yeah.
And they just level the entire area. Like, they come in so hot that they just destroy everything. Like, they blow away the entire structure to ash. And the next scene is like Kylo Ren and some stormtroopers like basically standing around in the rubble. And then a stormtrooper is like, "Oh, sir, like, it sounds like the droid was spotted in the forest." Like, oh, that's real lucky.
Yeah.
So I guess that gives you an idea of JJ's priorities. Like, he had a character who was logically pursuing the consequences of what they were doing, and he had to have all these like characters ignore him in order to set up a big action set piece where the First Order and the Resistance meet.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, if they didn't go to that bar and they listened to Finn, like, that wouldn't have happened. So he had to have a character that was being logical, have characters respond to him illogically, like, in order to have this big set piece. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, films have to do that all the time, but come on, you can be cleaner about that.
Yeah.
So, and Finn, of course, being one of the greatest mysteries with so much potential, that was the thing that people were talking about when the Force Awakens trailer first dropped. Like, who is this stormtrooper who looks to be Force sensitive? Like, who is this stormtrooper, like, who is holding a lightsaber and all the promotional material? Like, his action figure came with a lightsaber. Like, there was no question. Like, this dude is somehow doing Jedi stuff. Even that original trailer starts off with, like, a shot of the desert. and you hear Snoke saying, there has been an awakening in the Force. Have you felt it? And then Finn pops up in a stormtrooper outfit, and it's like, holy crap, a Force-sensitive stormtrooper. Like, that's what they wanted you to believe. And they even carried that into the film itself when Finn was like, one of my brothers is down, and I'm holding him in my arms as he dies, and now I'm feeling like that something is not right, and I don't want to kill these people. And then like Kylo looked at him as if he was suspicious at what he was seeing. Like it could be construed that he was like sensing like maybe some Force potential in him. Like instead of arguing with Poe about trying to escape without destroying all of his other crew members, like he was happily firing on them. Like he could have been like, listen, like I'm having second thoughts about this because I lost a friend, and this all seems insane, and I need to get out of here. But that was my friend, and a lot of these guys are my friends. Like we're all here against our will. Like maybe we can slip out of here as bloodlessly as possible. Like maybe there could still be a fight. Like Poe could be like, fire, fire, and Finn could be like, I can't. And Poe's like, what do you mean you can't? And Finn says, I served with these guys. Like I can't just fire on them. Like these guys are all slaves. And Poe can start pulling like some like fancy maneuvers to get out of there. Like maybe you could have really seen his talent on display. Like they could have said how good of a pilot he was.
Yeah.
So that was essentially the end of Finn's journey as a stormtrooper. Like everything from there was him like trying to figure out like whether he's running from the First Order or running from the Resistance. Like there was nothing more about him like being a stormtrooper or being Force sensitive. Like the rest of the story was another Abrams conceit, which is like he just wants to run away like Luke, So again, we have Johnson picking up the pieces of that failed storyline. That's another thing. Like people really hate the Canto Bight scene, right? But what Canto Bight did was Johnson's solution to Finn. Like he's like, what is Finn? Finn was a part of a cog in the machine. He broke free of it, but he has no journey other than to get away. Like that was his whole character arc in the first movie. Like which he ended unconsciously too. Like so he picked up a lightsaber, he failed miserably, and he ended up on like a bacta tank or whatever.
Yeah.
And like his journey didn't even go anywhere. So Rian Johnson was like, clearly this dude is not Force sensitive, but he's in the movie. He's here. What is he about? And so he developed the Canto Bight thread to give him something to be about, which was, running from the machine isn't enough to stop it. You're always going to be running from the machine if that's what you're afraid of. So you have to see how the tendrils of that enterprise is in everything. You have to see the effects of it beyond just military conflicts. And he sees that in civilian life and in the way that privileged classes are, raking it all in because they're funding this whole thing. Like you had to be shown that breaking free was brave and great, but you're just running. Like you have to stand for something, and this scene will give you that lens to see that. That was Rian Johnson's solution to Finn, like to give Finn a real arc.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson also had the task of having all these characters learn and also fail so they had somewhere to go in the final chapter.
Yeah.
Like these characters had to become better people and also reach a tough point because you have to fall first in order to rise. So he has these characters all learning something with really tragic consequences, and that's an amazing idea to have these characters not just fail because they suck, but to learn as they fail. And that's another thing that's completely gone with the third film.
Yeah.
None of that was there. Like Poe was basically a new guy, which is weird. Finn was basically shades of what he was by the end of Force Awakens. It's almost as if you can connect those two films. It's so trying to undo everything that The Last Jedi did that The Last Jedi can almost stand on its own. Like you could put Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker together, and it could just be a sequel.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I didn't like Finn for the longest time. Like I didn't like him until I had seen The Last Jedi, and I had some time to think about it because I didn't like him even then. Like I didn't like that he woke up and it was just like a cartoon character right out of the gate. Like that's a huge problem I had with Finn. So as a stormtrooper, like stormtroopers are until recently, they're all business. They're soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, they're brainwashed slaves. They've been conditioned as children to become mindless troops. So you don't decide to cast that aside and then just be a goofball right out of the gate. Like, he doesn't know how to be a goofball. He didn't have a lifetime experience of being a goofball. It's like right away he shows up being silly and flirting. Got a boyfriend, cute boyfriend. Like, it's not what a dude who was indoctrinated would do.
Yeah.
Like, how did you feel about that?
Um, I actually kind of liked Finn. I mean, I get what you're saying. I never really thought about like that type of stuff, but it's in the Force Awakens. It's he's got like I guess a good message. It's not like said. It's well, I don't know. It's kind of said a bit more loudly than The Last Jedi. It's like, okay, just stop running away from like all your fears. Just hold your ground. And he tried, but he sucked at it. But it was a little good message. But I mean, other than that, like Finn, like just thinking back on it now, like he was so on and off about like just it's like being a goofball for one thing, but then also just like being a paranoid like coward in a way. Just like Solo, should we go here? Are there like first order spies or any of that? And so and it doesn't really mix that well because those are two completely different things you got going on with Finn, and yeah, that does hurt the character a lot.
Like, you gotta have full arcs. Like, A New Hope has a whole arc for all of its characters. Like, Han Solo was a scumbag who was morally ambiguous. He was tested, and he passed the test by coming back and saving the day.
Yeah.
The idea of a trilogy is that you have one overall story, and each film needs to stand on its own and be a good story. And the only one that did that in this trilogy was The Last Jedi.
Yeah. This is where like just my Abrams mind comes into play with Force Awakens. I feel like he just, since he knew that there was gonna be a trilogy, he just tried to like set a footprint on where to start these characters off and where all the other directors should like pick up with them. But it wasn't really his trilogy to control, so it didn't really work out the way he wanted it to. So its result is a jumbled mess. The good solution was just write the characters.
Yeah. The Last Jedi was like, it was the only one that delivered on any of it, like both logically and from just filmmaking. Like, the craft of The Last Jedi is amazing. Like, things like when you consider, for example, like, and I can just list things all day, but off the top of my head, the tension that's developed with Snoke, like leading up to that release of tension with like Kylo and Rey fighting back to back, like all of that tension followed by what is arguably one of the greatest fights in all of Star Wars. Like, it's amazing. It's just so crisp. Like, the buildup of that fight is happening the entire film, and you get this whole thing about Snoke pulling all the strings, pushing them together, and the tension of him just totally manhandling Rey, and then being this like cruel, malicious character talking to Kylo about what he's going to have to do and kind of narrating the moment, only for it to backfire right in his face. Like, and then that sort of like, oh my god, moment of this fight happening, and it's Rey and Kylo working together to do it. Like, it's brilliant. And in comparison to Kylo and the Knights of Ren, like that fight was just very forgettable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember a single thing about it. Like, shouldn't that fight be meaningful? Because if we knew what the Knights of Ren were and what they meant to him, like, that fight would have had more impact. Like, the decision to fight them would have had more emotional attachment. Like, his decision to kill Snoke, like the way Rian Johnson had him talking to Kylo Ren, it's like a classic Star Wars villain. Like, every Star Wars villain like narrates the fight because they know what is supposed to happen. Like, the first time you see Palpatine in Return of the Jedi, like, he's like, you're gonna strike me down, like, you're gonna get angry and you're gonna strike me down because you're gonna take my place because that's what's supposed to happen. Your friends, like, they're all dead. They're in a trap. Everything is happening as I foresaw it. That's a classic Star Wars villain, and Snoke was no different.
Yeah.
So Snoke was like, I see what you're doing. Like, I want you to take that lightsaber and kill your true enemy. And Kylo Ren was savvy enough to like show him like that in his head without showing him the identity of his true enemy. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was just so smooth.
Yeah.
But then that's undone when it's revealed Snoke was just this shell of a thing. Like, maybe not even a conscious being. It's really disappointing. If Kylo made that tough decision to kill what was essentially a drone, like the emotional impact of that scene has been yanked from under us.
Mm-hmm.
He just killed a remote control bot. There's no hard decision there. Like how about this? Like, I wouldn't mind being fair here. Like, I wouldn't mind talking about things like we not only liked, but also things we disliked about The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Because it's not a perfect film.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But actually going back to what you said about Snoke,
Mhm.
it does take like all the emotional impact that Kylo Ren has in that scene, like killing his true, and I love that so much in The Last Jedi. And so, and I think the reason like it's why fans hated it so much is like, oh, we didn't know who Snoke was, why should we care? I'm like, well, here's the thing with Snoke. You take everything about like the character of Snoke, like what he means, what he stands for. He's a puppet master, and it's no different than how Emperor worked out in the original trilogy. You take
Yeah.
away the prequels, and Emperor is the exact same thing as Snoke. They both serve their purpose to be this puppet master, but what I love what they did with Snoke is that Snoke was Kylo Ren's true enemy. Vader just saw that Emperor was just kind of being a douche and just killing his son. So it's, I love that like thing they did with Snoke, and then it's like, oh no, you see, Snoke was actually just this thing that Emperor created, and he's literally got a jar full of them. So it's
Snoke
it,
mix.
it's so stupid. It just ruins an incredibly well crafted scene. So that's very disappointing to me.
Yeah. So back to Last Jedi.
Sorry.
Like I do want to say that even though the Canto Bite sequence like did accomplish something worthwhile, I do feel that maybe they could have been pursuing Finn's story, like, or at least trying to tie it in a little closely to the idea of being a stormtrooper. Like here's my solution with both Rey and Finn on what the Last Jedi could have done. Well, first, The Force Awakens. We've talked about this too. So they could have developed Rey's ability to touch things and learn about their past. So instead of the stupid map situation, which went unexplained, she could have used that ability to track down Luke somehow. Granted, that lightsaber would not have been in Luke's hand when he went to where he ended up, but maybe pull a thread of that and do a little detective work to track Luke down in a way that showcased her powers. Because she never really used that touching ability again. The knife in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
They brought that back to show the memories of the knife, which I think, in all fairness, they showed things that the knife would have been there for, which include the murder of her parents. Again, it's just a mess of how that power works. Like, none of it makes sense. So, like, you need to focus then to a specific type of vision. Like, what kind of a vision are you getting from the power of Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber? Can that possibly lead you to Luke? I think that would have been better than a map. But then you wouldn't have your droid, like you wouldn't have your chase, you wouldn't have all these stupid beats that J.J. Abrams needed to do in order to mimic the pacing of the first film. So that's kind of out the window.
Yeah.
And I think for Finn, if they needed a Canto Bite type thing where he was basically like decolonized, is what happened there. Like that was the decolonization for Finn. He was set up on a path of rebellion from that moment forward. Like that trip gave him something to believe in. So I think maybe instead of Canto Bite, which I get, you need to see the war profiteers. Like, this war isn't just about good and bad guys. There's people out there who are living a good life because of it. I get that. But if there's a way he can see children being enslaved by stormtroopers that were like him and suffered his same fate, he could have been like, I can't just run from that. Like, they're still out there kidnapping children.
Yeah. And especially if that's like something that like he had to live through. Like, well, like just him being a stormtrooper and him not feeling okay with that. And so you could definitely do some interesting stuff with that, I feel like. And even if you're gonna spread that throughout the entire trilogy, that could work for a character who just doesn't who thinks like his solution at first is just to run from everything,
Hmm.
just get away from this, but then he's just drawn back to like his past and like how he was tortured the same way, and he became this janitor to stormtrooper type of
Hmm.
deal going on, which I think I'll probably talk about that later, Finn being a janitor.
Yeah. And here's something that you could do. Maybe not for the Last Jedi, but I think I think it would be perfect for a third film. One thing I wanted from Finn that we never got was him essentially feeling that his own experience was enough that he could attempt to reach out to other stormtroopers and maybe turning an entire battalion, like not like in Rise of Skywalker where they already turned
He's
good
just
because
already
that's
there.
just lazy. Like Finn actually having an impact by convincing these stormtroopers, maybe like maybe Finn gets cornered and he says like, "Do you know who I am? Do you know what happened?" You know, have Finn show them something with his own wisdom, short as it may be, maybe he convinces a couple stormtroopers to remove their helmets also. Then you can see that there are people under there. That's a powerful gesture because stormtroopers have never been people to us.
Yeah.
If you have a wave of them all inspired to take their helmets off and you saw all the mix of faces, we didn't need they could have always been bad, but Abrams decided that that was going to be a possibility, and he never followed through with that, with what that could mean.
Yeah.
They basically didn't follow through with Finn reconciling his life as a stormtrooper. He didn't really do that. He became a good guy, and once he did, he just went back and ruthlessly executed every stormtrooper he encountered. That's not a reconciliation of your past.
Isn't that like something like Finn just turning the battalion? That's like something in Colin Trevorrow's script of Episode 9.
Apparently, yes. Apparently, in College of War was Duel of the Fates. There's a moment where Finn leads an uprising on Coruscant, I think, where he basically turns some stormtroopers to the good side, which I think is a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely nothing happens to Finn. He's always running after Rey and screaming her name. That's his big thing, and it doesn't even make sense. There is no arc for Finn. His arc in The Force Awakens is running. He ran from the First Order. He ran from every fight. He tried to run from Kanata's place, but they all got blown up, so he couldn't run anymore. So he just fought and was knocked unconscious. The beginning and end of his whole plot thread in the first film was running and failing to make it.
Yeah.
So there was nowhere else for Rian Johnson to take him. So basically, he was presented with a character that's oh, you're running still? That's what you're about? You can't run. So what are you about then? And it required a character that was like a real person, which I love. Whatever people feel about Rose, I think Rose is a great character.
Mm-hmm.
She was a mechanic and, not seen as a hero, but she was fighting because she believed in the heroes.
Yeah.
Heroes inspired her. Finn inspired her. And to see that, I have more resolve than my heroes, now I gotta be a hero. You've got real people who are behind the scenes of all this greatness, stepping up and forcing these heroes to be heroes. And that's what people hated about it. They hate that heroes just couldn't be heroes. They had to be chastised first, that they had to be fallible, they had to be shown a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Poe. This is what it's all coming down to. So Poe was practically a throwaway character in The Force Awakens. He's just a hotshot pilot. He didn't really have a big story arc, but then when it came time for Johnson to have Poe be a main character, it was how do I take this character from one point of fallibility and have him learn something? And that's why he gets smacked down. He was always winning the war, but they were always Pyrrhic victories. They were losing rebels as they were destroying a First Order ship, and Leia wasn't having it. She's you're wreaking too much damage, and he denied an order in that opening sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they were successful in the end, there was a cost to it, and Leia was you disobeyed a direct order and you're demoted. And I love this idea that Poe thinks he has it all figured out, believes he has the right to know information that he's not privy to after being demoted. Like, he's not militarily entitled to any of that information, but he's like, I'm a hero. I'm a classic archetype of a film hero. Like, why aren't you telling me this information? Like, but in a real military scenario, it's like, dude, you were busted and ranked to nothing. You get no information.
Yeah.
And everyone's big argument is that, like, if she just told Poe the plan, it's like, why? Like, why would she tell Poe the plan? But the flip side of that, everyone asks why Hodo didn't tell Poe the plan. But the flip side of that is her plan would have actually been completely successful if Poe didn't screw off and jeopardize everything by not following orders.
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about the military hierarchy and how precarious it can be. Like, Hodo is probably the most hated character in Star Wars, if I had to guess. It's weird to me because I feel she's about military protocol, and if the idea is that if she believes that following protocol is going to save lives, then there's no reason for her to just allow a mutiny. Like, the big thing I hear from people when they complain about her, like, and I don't want to be the one to say it, but they're the ones saying it. So she's not only a woman, but because of the way she's presenting herself. Like, she's wearing a gown, she's got liberal colored hair, she's got purple hair. People go like, oh, she looks like a women's studies teacher at community college. Like, that's an actual quote from someone I heard once, like, which is pretty funny, but it's also like, again, why they're upset at her audacity. But like, stylistically, like, she is not out of character for a Star Wars character. Like, Princess Leia dressed similarly throughout her tenure as a commander. Like, sometimes she had like camouflage, but I have no doubt that, like, if Hodo was on the ground in action, she'd be dressed for action. But that's what she was wearing when she got called up to serve as the new commander. But I think with Leia, the difference was that she was initially presented as a damsel in distress. She had to earn her place as a figurehead in the Star Wars universe, whereas Holdo just showed up and was given the job. So I think people unconsciously have a problem with that, and they have a problem with her telling the hero that he can't be a hero. And, according to these traditional archetypes of what a hero is, which is a person that just, like, acts on their own instincts, like, they play fast and loose with the rules, and they get the job done. I don't think she was any more or less out of nowhere than, like, Admiral Akbar. Like, first time we saw him, like, he showed up like, oh, by the way, this is your admiral. He's in charge of you. Do everything he says. He's a fishman too, by the way, so don't stare. Like, I know we've never seen a fishman before. Like, dude, people should have hated Admiral Akbar because, he showed up out of nowhere and he was bossing people around. Like, how did people not be like, oh my God, Star Wars just had a man with a fish head. I can't even believe it. Like, this progressive liberal movement, like, they're trying to get the fish vote in the next election. What's next? Captain Polar Bear? Like, get out of here with your libtard politics. Like, why you gotta put politics in my fantasies, bro? Like, no, they just accepted him because he had a gruff male voice. Nobody batted an eyelash at Akbar because, apart from the way he looked, he fit the archetype of a commander. Like, I don't care at this point. Like, that's why you don't like Hodo. Like, I don't care if it hurts to hear that or if you think I'm wrong. It is partly why people don't like her. If you look at Hodo as a character who holds military protocol as the highest order, then every single thing she does makes complete sense. Like, including her baller maneuver. Like, she may not have known what it was going to do, but she was ready to do it when the time came. And that just makes Hodo an incredible character to me.
Yeah.
Last Jedi, it's not a perfect film, but I look at her character as being well constructed and consistent. And she was also charming too. Like, she was very kid's gloves with Poe. Like, she did it in a way that was actually very endearing. And the thing that she did that was very cool was that she made Poe a better person. Like, he learned from his mistakes and became more, like, resourceful. And, by the end of that second film, like, you feel he's a better guy. Like, like when he introduces himself to Rey, like, oh man. And then there's Rise of Skywalker. Um, that's one thing about all these like side characters that if anybody hasn't watched it yet, but the Pop Culture Detective, it has this video essay that's supported with a lot of literature that all these characters are actually good characters because they're not just here to hold back the heroes, which everybody felt was happening. They're there to prop them up and make them better.
Mm-hmm.
Like by the end of this movie, you genuinely feel that. Like you genuinely feel that Finn is a better character. He's got a clear sense of purpose. He knows what he needs to do instead of running. Poe is a better leader. Like he's got a view of the big picture and he knows how to command in a way that's effective in saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Luke, who was a master again. Like he was disconnected from the Force because he ran away to hide like a coward, as J.J. Abrams said. So they gave him an arc with this female who was like challenging his decision to be a coward in order to make him a better person. And by the end of it, he stepped up and performed like maybe one of the most incredible Jedi like acts that we've seen in any of these movies.
Yeah.
And he also gives a great background on like what a typical hero has always been in film and why this was so challenging for people to see this new type of hero's journey that involved like women sort of dressing guys down and calling them out on their selfish behavior. A lot of these things that like we think are heroic like maybe aren't as heroic as we thought they were. So that sort of leads us to I guess the final thing that I have, which is Poe in The Rise of Skywalker. He's the same piece of crap from the beginning of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
He's mindlessly leading people to danger with no sense of consequences. Like he just sucks.
Yeah, that's another just like disregard what you saw in Last Jedi. Just look at this. It's Poe. He's a hotshot again. He's reckless, and it's just all those things that like the Last Jedi said. Yeah, Poe is all of that, but like he has what it takes to be a hero, and that's what he learns throughout the entire film. And then Rise of Skywalker's like, no, he's just all those things we said before.
Yeah, and like by the end of that movie, he's like, guys, I thought we had a chance at this, but we're all gonna die. Like, what was that all about? Like, I understand there's a little bit of like pressure to stop them from launching their fleet, but the new Poe would have been like, hey, has anybody heard from Lando? Like, anybody got a word on that fleet we're hoping to get?
Yeah.
Like, this Poe carried none of the lessons that he learned at all. Like, none of his character arc from the last movie was on display, and that was the real tragedy of it all.
And it's a shame too, because like what Poe learned in The Last Jedi, that was a great arc to have for a character who had literally nothing in the last movie besides that he's just an ace pilot and he destroyed the big bad base. But it's a great thing to turn that around and show that okay, but this character's also reckless. He's not he's like he wants to get the job done, but he doesn't think about what that will take, and taking that and making that to an arc, it works. But and then it's just this, they go back to the old roots and it doesn't work. So
like Rian Johnson took the threads of The Force Awakens, which none of them were tied off, like none of them had any logical continuation. Like he picked up the pieces and was like, what is this about? And I think he did a fantastic job. Like he did a fantastic job of taking what Abrams left him. Like he did his homework assignment and he gets an A. Like he might not have liked what his assignment was, but he did the assignment and he aced it. Like he answered all the questions that I don't think JJ had answers to. And I swear I cannot find it, but I swear both of us saw it before The Last Jedi came out, before this wicked backlash. JJ Abrams said, I wish I had written this script. He said that I wish I had made The Last Jedi.
You gotta be kidding me.
You know why you can't find that anymore?
Why?
It's because the internet has become so saturated with all the backlash and all this like backtracking that you just can't find it anywhere anymore. Like he had high praise for The Last Jedi. Like he was hyping it up and saying like, I don't know how I'm going to follow this up, and it's like he literally didn't. Like he didn't know how to follow that up. I feel that a lot of JJ's decisions were geared towards like getting fan praise and just wanted to win fans back and wanted to look good in the eyes of the audience. Like he doesn't care for standing for anything. Like he doesn't care about saying anything important. Like listen, I would have given JJ all the benefits of all the doubts if he hadn't turned on Johnson like a little rat bastard. Like that is a rat move, dude. Like you're gonna rat on someone because you're in trouble. Like you're gonna point a finger to take the heat off of you. Like that's a punk move. Like I thought you were a big player in Hollywood, dude.
Yeah.
Like there's just no reason for Luke to catch the lightsaber in The Rise of Skywalker. Like
No.
he only did that so that fans could feel content again after Johnson had him like toss the lightsaber, because that made sense. Because if Luke was a coward that fled and hid, and if you showed up at his door and was like, hey, take this lightsaber, the Luke that J.J. Abrams painted would absolutely throw that over his shoulder. Like, he wouldn't just take it and be like, no, you're right. I've been selfish. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Like,
Yeah.
you found the map. You got my lightsaber. Like, let's do this. Like, no, that guy was hiding. Like, he had no intention of leaving. Like, he went there to die. And it's great, too. And I know a lot of people were upset at the lack of power fantasy, that you want to vicariously live through someone whose abilities far exceed anything you could realistically achieve. So that's why the Jedi are so exciting. Like, they're space wizards.
Yeah.
And Luke was a dour, like, mopey piece of crap. But you know what I like about it? I'm older now. I don't need power fantasies. Like, I need things to be sympathetic with, like, how I feel and the things that I struggle with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like I identify with this Luke. I was like, I get it, man. Like, holy crap. Like, life is hard, and sometimes you just want to go to an island, just cut yourself off and give up. Like, that's a daily thought, and to see Luke going through that made me go, man, I'm not alone. Like, Luke feels that way, which means the writer who created this character feels that way, and that made me feel seen in a way that, like, Obi-Wan, like, fast running through battle droids, like, ever did. So the overall feeling I'm left with is that given what was established as all the plot points and story elements of this new trilogy, like, we had Johnson, like, making a genuinely great film among something that probably wasn't planned very well. Which I get. Like, these things aren't easy to make, and I'm sure, like, people that make these sorts of movies, like, nobody goes into this making a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these people think they're doing the right thing. Like, was there a better trilogy? Sure. Was The Last Jedi a great film that I will watch over and over again forever? Like, definitely. And for those who haven't yet, like, check out Knives Out. Rian Johnson is a master craftsman, and Knives Out is so tightly constructed. Like, there's no holes in it. It's funny. It's interesting. It's brilliant. It's exciting, and it's airtight.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happens is set up in advance, and it plays out. Like, you just get a sense of how his mind is working. Like, he wants to tell a good story, but he wants there to be a bit of a deconstruction, and that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this back at Abrams. So Abrams was like, Luke ran away, he felt like a failure, and he disappeared when the First Order came to power, and now everyone is screwed. Abrams did that. And for Johnson to look back and say, what would be really fascinating? If Luke's failure ties back to the failures of the Jedi that allowed all this to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
So Luke going to look for the temple to kind of reflect on that, it's freaking brilliant, because it's like Luke going, like how did this all happen? Like, the Jedi let Anakin happen. They were misguided. They let the Emperor happen, like, right under their noses. Like, they weren't prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they fell apart. There were a bunch of, like, hubris-driven lunatics that just let everything fall apart. Like, that was Johnson taking a look at the big picture and really tying some important threads together. Like, that's fascinating. Like, that he was willing to do that and was willing to take a big bird's eye view of the whole thing and put into that kind of perspective.
Yeah.
And when we find Luke at the Last Jedi, like, he's arrived to the conclusion that the Jedi, for all their power, like, evil still happened. There's nothing they could do to stop it. Like, they didn't have, like, they didn't have the clairvoyance enough to conjure up a victory against the rise of the Empire from the stolen data tapes. Their devotion to that sad ancient religion served them not at all. Like, I think it's great because Abrams, on one hand, is like, what made these great for me as a kid? I want to feel like a kid again. And Johnson's like, why did these films make me feel great as a kid? And why was I wrong? And then he's analyzing it. Like, he's questioning things like you may have taken for granted as a child. Like, I prefer that personally. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I just prefer that kind of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Johnson didn't come in and just throw everything away and then subvert like everyone's new favorite word. Like, he wasn't doing that at all. Like, he was just taking what was left and try to make sense out of it in a good way with good character development. Like, that's all he did. And I guess, in conclusion for me, the whole thing with subversion it has almost become like a poisonous word in the way that that progressive has become a poisonous word. The word progressive on its own, by definition, is like it's moving forward. It's a good direction. But subversion has been a storytelling device since there were stories.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew everything that was going to happen in a story, like, that story ceases to be exciting to you. Like, when you are surprised by the outcome, like, that's when you enjoy a story. Like, stories are always subverting your expectations. Like, the fact that this has suddenly become like a new thing that people think that this is being done is just a misunderstanding of what storytelling is. Like, Johnson didn't subvert anything. Like, he just played off with what he was left with.
Yeah.
You got anything else to add about the sequel trilogy? 'Cause I actually went through all my notes.
I really want to tackle on episode 9 a little bit more. I feel
Okay.
like we haven't done our fair share with that hot mess yet. So,
Oh boy.
so it's like, just take away the fact that episode 9, it's going to try to undo everything that happened in The Last Jedi, or most of the things that like just people did not like in The Last Jedi. Take that away. You can go into the theater and fully expect that this could just be a fun, entertaining, and maybe possibly a good film, just like separated from Star Wars. This movie, it's obviously terribly written. I don't like the way it was made. It felt very lazy to me at so many points. There are a million more mystery boxes in this movie than like The Force Awakens had, and it doesn't work, and especially for a finale. If you're gonna finish up this saga on this note, then don't keep things in the open anymore. Try to like close things. Abrams said that like he's not the best at like making endings or doing that all stuff, and it's like, okay, then try to learn why, instead of doing what you normally do with all your movies and just have like all these like whoa, I just had a stroke, I'm sorry, these like
It's all right.
mystery elements behind it all. Like, just try to just like put a bow on it and like wrap it up in a present and just say, here you go, this is the final product, this is what I have in store for you. So like episode 9, it opens up, okay, Kylo is like, he's having a power struggle now that the Emperor came back. How'd he come back? We don't know. He's just there, he's back, and it kind of acts like the movie acts very natural about that. It's just like, yeah, Emperor's back. That's just the throwaway line in the crawl. It's the dead speak, and
the dead speak. I love how like the Emperor is referred to as the late Emperor Palpatine, like as if he's like a dearly missed character.
Yeah, so Emperor's back. We don't know how, but okay. So moving on. So Kylo finds a wayfinder that can lead to Emperor, and he wants to kill Emperor so like he's not a threat to his power. I don't mind that. That kind of works. And going off of where Kylo was in the Last Jedi, he like kind of wants to do things his own way now. He's tired of puppet masters. He's tired of just his life being screwed over by all these people. I kind of like that. He's like, all right, I'm just gonna find this guy and kill him. But then Emperor's like, well, actually, I'll give you this fleet that I've been building underground for like an eternity, and it's okay. So Emperor has an army of Star Destroyers that he's been building for who knows how long. And then Kyle's like, okay, I'll go with that. So yeah.
Just as a quick side, like I don't even want to dignify the stupid like novel adaptation of The Rise of Skywalker that apparently explains everything that wasn't explained in The Rise of Skywalker, like how Palpatine came back, who Rey's parents were, and stuff like that. I'm not even going to dignify that because I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but back when The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out in 2014, like there was a behind the scenes video they released like before the movie came out, like taking a look at Spider-Man's new costume in that movie because he has a totally different new suit. And I wrote a comment on that video saying like, so how did he get the resources to make this costume? And apparently, and I got a ton of responses from people saying that it was explained in a comic or something like that. And I said, okay, so let's say hypothetically, like 50 years from now, when people watch that movie for the first time, are they also going to try to track down that very comic that explained where he gets the new suit? Granted, him getting a new suit is like the least of that film's problems, but it's and I had someone say, well, if they were devoted enough, they will. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. The movies, and it's the same with Rise of Skywalker, the movies should stand strong on their own, and like you should not have to go to outside sources to, find out these sorts of things. Like you shouldn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing with Emperor. It's like if you want to say in a novel that this Emperor is a clone, which even then that doesn't make sense on why he's very like just
weird. Why are his fingers all like all messed up? And why is he like
zombie eyes
butt faced Palpatine
and everything? And like why is he on like a puppet crane and something like that? And so that doesn't make sense. But even then, the movie never establishes this. So it's and like what you said, if like somebody 50 years from now just goes back and watches this, they're not gonna find that out. Like just track that down. I mean, with Spider-Man 2, it's just like, okay, he's just got a new suit. I can live with that. It's very noticeable, but it's not a big concern. This is a big deal. If this is going to be your main villain of the movie, and he just comes back out of nowhere, you kind of need to establish that a little bit more than just like, oh yeah, he's back, by the way. And yeah, Emperor just being back, just it's such a lazy decision. Like, if Abrams really tried, like, you could really try this hard, and you could seriously make Kylo Ren the main villain of your movie. You really could. You don't need more puppet masters, like, because that's all the last films have been. And then Last Jedi is like, okay, how about let's just kill off the puppet master and make your main villain the actual main villain this time. But Abrams is like, no, I'm just going to bring back Palpatine as the last resort. So there you go. Palpatine's back. And we've already went into Poe. So Rey being a Palpatine, what are your thoughts on that?
Unnecessary. Because see, the thing is, I love what they did with what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi by saying that Rey is a nobody. Like, her parents were nobody. And what I love about that is because that's kind of life in a nutshell. Like, you don't have to come from greatness to be great.
And that's the thing. It's like Last Jedi said, it's like, yeah, lineage doesn't matter. It's not about like, okay, so you're connected to this person, that's why you have all this power. It's like the kid with the broom at the end of The
Mhm.
Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably, I don't know, a billion fan theories on why that kid with the broom is connected to Kiadi Mundi, but it's like, who cares? It's not about like, where you were in the past. It's just about like, okay, lineage doesn't matter. It's a new generation. Let's just stick with that. How about that? But
It's not where you came from. It's what you do now that defines you.
yeah.
And but no, then Rise of Skywalker is like, oh lol, being on the dark side gives you shark teeth.
Yeah, but it's not even just, it's not like stupid things like that, but the first act of the movie is just terribly paced. It's like every single
Oh jeez.
scene, it's like, okay, Chewie's alive. I mean, Chewie's dead. He was just talking about, oh, wait, no, next scene, Chewie's alive. Oh, and we're all happy now, but he's captured, but he's alive, so we're all happy. No, wait. Okay, so now all the rebels and friends, they got like some throwaway characters that were just introduced. Okay, no, now they're on the Star Destroyer and they're trying to rescue. Okay, no, wait, now, and it's such a mess.
It's so tone deaf too.
Yeah. And the second act picks up like just a little bit better, even with the Harrison Ford just being rolled out of bed scene, which is like probably my favorite scene of the movie. But it was definitely distracting to see that, like, how long and just scruffy he looked. It was, but and then the third act, I don't know if there's anything more to say there.
I was at least laughing by the time we got to the third act, because at least like I was not fully expecting Ian McDiarmid to really ham it up as the Emperor. Like, he's wonderful as the Emperor as always. I mean, he's always been great, but like once he gets going in that third act, like there's just like I burst out laughing when he's like, nothing will stop the return of the Sith, and then suddenly he shoots a ton of lightning
just
into the sky, and it's just like.
Bass blows.
I was at least laughing. I was at least laughing at the end, which I guess is something.
I guess. But yeah, it's and then Ben Solo's there because, well, he just has to be. He doesn't. He only says "ow," and then he's there. He dies, but yeah, then he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the ending where Rey goes back to Tatooine. Doesn't make sense. That's not where her journey began. That's where the Skywalker journey began. And then she says, "I'm Rey Skywalker,"
which became a meme.
Which became a meme. But yeah, and then Tatooine. That's not her place.
Yeah,
he doesn't have a connection to that. But but the fans know it, and it's Skywalker.
And the frustrating thing is, like, apparently J.J. Abrams did shoot an ending where it was about Rey with her friends, but he ditched that in favor of nostalgia.
Whatever. That's
yeah.
But Rise of Skywalker was just a frustrating movie to deal with, to say the least. So
for sure.
Yeah.
We got anything else to say?
I think I've said all I needed to say.
Yeah, same here. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully this was entertaining for you. Hopefully. But yeah, hopefully we may do some more stuff like this where the two of us discuss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see, because that'd be fun. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Chris. Lots of fun.
Yeah, no problem.
And feel free to like, subscribe, comment, tell us how wrong we are down below. Go ahead and all opinions welcome. And stay tuned for more. Take care, everyone. Bye.